All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today we have Dr. Raye Mitchell on my channel today. Welcome, Dr. Raye.
Well, good afternoon, or is it just good evening? But I am so pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'll give you the best part. So I am living my best life ever. Left brain, right brain, totally in the fitness, wellness, writing, and creativity. So by training, I am a business consultant, lawyer, writer, and producer of extravagant creatives.
Wow. What is your genre?
Well, I write in two sectors. In my nonfiction work, I write in the area of leadership, beyond unconscious bias, innovation areas, creativity. In my fiction work, which I'm debuting into that area now, I'm starting out in legal thrillers, which is a kind of a hybrid, a legal thriller meets Christian fiction on occasion. And basically, I write about anything that I discover is fun.
All right. Tell us about Me Too.
Well, Me Too is a very interesting part of my journey. By profession, I am a trained lawyer. I represent both organizations and individuals in workplace matters. Okay. So in the Me Too era, there was a rise in, I'll use the word consciousness for lack of another word, where both the employers were put on notice to improve their effectiveness in preventing sexual harassment in the workplace. Employee groups were on the rise in activism, and then individuals were more conscientious than ever about how to protect their rights. So in the Me Too area, my area of expertise is helping organizations get it right. I train, I coach, I design solution programs, come in-house, talk to the people, give them some ways in which they can get it right.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your books. You can show your books and tell us about your books.
Okay, so I am a published author of 5 books, and I have with me tonight 3 of them. One is my nonfiction, 2 are my nonfictions, and the third is my short story prequel to my fiction series. So let's start with the work stuff. So the first book, this is not my first book, but one of these books, this one's called When They Go Low, We Go High. It's a very familiar phrase from my Harvard classmate, Michelle Obama. And the premise of my book is how do women of color master the art of persuasion to win big battles? The net of the point is, how do you succeed in persuasion when you're under fire? And the genesis of writing that really has to do with argument, persuasion. We're always trying to convince people to do something. We live in a world of persuasion. And what I found from my experience is that a lot of times women, we know our points, we're passionate about our points, but sometimes we let the argument get the better of us, and then we become labeled the angry Black woman or the feisty Latina. And so what I'm trying to do is help people scope those nuanced moments for persuasion and negotiation, which is what I teach. So my whole premise is, just because you're under fire doesn't mean you can't have grace. And learned that a lot from Michelle. Well, went to school mostly with Barack and know Michelle and Barack tangentially in that regard. So I put that book out it came out in 2018. 2018, yes. So that same year, I gave you a brief synopsis about me and the work I do, and I do a lot of things that are interesting. One of which is I started a foundation over 12 years ago called the New Reality Foundation. The New Reality Foundation is dedicated to helping young women and girls of color, particularly African-American women and girls, prepare to be global leaders. And so in that work, I do the same thing. We coach, we provide mentoring, we provide seminars, workshops, hands-on, health, wellness. We provide an array of support. We're a national foundation. In the course of my work, I also wrote a book, which is the first of its kind. This one's called Invisible No More, helping to prepare young Black women and girls to be leaders.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I wrote that book is that there's a lot of scattered information about. There's a research point here, there's a white paper there, there's an advocacy group report somewhere else. In this book, I pulled together the last 2 years of known research, reports, commentary in one place. So if you're an advocate for anything to do with equality, justice, fairness, you can read the book, and you can also use the notes to source some of the original materials. And the premise of that is we, as we all know, are highly visible, but we're treated as if we're invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as a leadership platform, I advocate on ways in which we, as women, can help empower our girls to let their light shine big, bright, and bold. And there's a lot of issues, as we know, that try to dim our light.
Yes.
And I work against that. So that's what that book is about. So those are my, those are my left brain adventures. I have an undergraduate degree in public policy from the University of Southern California. I graduated from the USC, not the University of South Carolina, University of Southern California, master's program in business administration. So I have an MBA in business organization, management, and leadership. And then after about, I don't know, 9-10 years of management and leadership, I went back to Harvard Law School. So after I've done all those things, I really found that I loved my writing voice. So I got the courage to first navigate into writing. Mm-hmm. Nonfiction was easiest for me, obviously. And so this year I've come forth with my first fiction work. And this one is called Collusion. And it's a short story prequel to my full novel, which is called Obstruction of Justice. Mm-hmm. And Collusion introduces a series of characters, all of which have secrets. And we know we live in a world where people have secrets, and people literally are dying to keep their secrets. So in Collusion, you have people trying to keep their secrets and the consequences of that.
Wow. Okay.
I stay busy.
Yes. What inspires you to write?
I love the freedom of exploring these alternative ways in which we see what we think we see. So whether I'm talking left brain stuff with my analytical work, because I am a nerd. I am a card-carrying nerd, and I'm proud of it. So I let my nerd on when I do that stuff. And writing that helps me figure out ways to help people solve some persistent and consistent problems, whether it's motivational, whether it's to think a different way, whether it's to go, I never thought about it that way. So on my fiction writing, I won't say I'm a retired lawyer, but I do legal work to help people who need help, mm-hmm. as much as running my law firm. So in my fiction work, I have tons of these stories from literally being a hard-charging litigator for 25 years. And in my stories, my primary character is Zola Penelope Robinson. And Zola is a hard-charging Harvard litigator, sounds familiar, but she's not Olivia Pope and she's not Annalise Keating. She's like a real person. And her whole thing was she retired from the practice of law, mm-hmm. to go do philanthropic work with young women and girls. But she's always coming out of retirement for that one last case to help somebody. They're generally women who are in distress. They don't have access to legal resources, and they really don't have access to like a Harvard lawyer. So she always finds her way back into the game. And that's fun because they're just stories that are just stored up, mm-hmm. from real experiences. So they're real life inspired. And the other quirk, just so I can finish up that, is when I write my fiction, because I deal with real world issues, mm-hmm. in the back, I have a whole section where I have real world resources. So like, for example, in Collusion, without giving away a storyline, there is a storyline in there where the person is doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot of emotional impact on them and their families. So in the back of the book, I have real connections, hotlines, places where people can go. So if they feel they're confronted by that same dilemma, they can take that into the real world and get some help.
Okay. What made you want to become a writer?
It just happened. I would say initially I was always a writer. Everybody else say that. And I'd write something but there would be notes and here and there. And I was always had a journal or a notepad and never really thought anything about it. And then around maybe 2005, I just put together a short book of some written poems, and they were successful. People liked it, and I was like, "Yeah, you're just being nice." And then from there, I got bolder and badder, and then I started to put them together in a more cohesive way. And then I published, I think, my first full. Then I participated in some anthologies, and those went well. And then I just one day was like, "Well, I guess I'll do a book." And then another book, and then another book. And my practice now with the work I do at my agency called the Genius Agency, I also help other people produce, protect, and tell their story to the masses. So me being a writer enables me to be as prepared for my clients. And it's just heck of fun. It's hard. Sometimes I think, let me go back to law school.
What is your role in the writing community?
Well, as I described, I am a learner. I'm always learning my craft. I'm a voracious learner. I learn by doing. I will, without shame, mimic the masters and adopt new techniques, find new ways to do my own voice. And then I found that I have a skill with the work that I've done as a business consultant, as a lawyer, is, as I said, helping other people bring their content to the market. So my agency is called the Boss Girl Genius Agency, the Genius Agency, and I work with CEOs, leaders, emerging people who have a story they want to tell, whether it's books, content, movies, it's the whole range. And so I'm both a coach, I do ghostwriting, I do developmental editing, although I don't call it that. I do intellectual property editing to help people protect their assets.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm both a participant, a learner, and a fierce advocate for getting more content into the world.
All right. What has been your greatest accomplishment thus far in writing?
Ooh, all right. I'm going to start with the latest, greatest. You know, as Janet said, what have you done for me lately? All right. So my most important accomplishment as a writer was to mature into writing the first fiction work. Because at that point, I was hanging hard on my nonfiction. I know what I know. I mean, after all, I have a business degree and a law degree, but both of those required a whole lot of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Both in marketing as well as storytelling. So they weren't that far from fiction, but the boldness of actually writing something that I would call a novel, I was just as nervous as I was the first day I appeared before a major court, because it's a different vibe. And of course, everyone's a critic. Yeah, everybody's a critic. So you got to stay within yourself. You have to be receptive to feedback, but you can't let other people write your story.
Yes.
Everybody wants to write your story, and they have a way in which you're going to write your story. But I'm like, but why don't you go write your own story? Or everybody has a comment about your book, and why did this? Not do nothing. So my comment would be, I don't say anything because you just, grace under fire. But my thoughts are, you haven't written word one. So until you at least do that, where do you get the nerve to want to tell me how to write my story? But I'm a voracious learner. You give me something to learn and I am in happy camp. So I'm learning the fiction writing. So I'm excited by that. My goal is to produce, I told someone just the other day, they said, well, what's your vision for this decade? I want a movie. I'm going to make at least one movie, come high water or not. A movie, a TV series, a this or that. I don't care. I just want to create more visual content.
Okay. How do you feel about reviews?
I believe that reviews can serve a purpose, but you also sort of need to know the perspective of the reviewer. And so I believe in constructive commentary. That's important. But I also, because I'm a studier of persuasion and those areas, you sort of got to know the motivation of the reviewer. Because there are some people who see themselves as a reviewer and their job is to tear it apart. That's just the way they do it. If you read their reviews, they're always tearing something apart. And so it makes you wonder, well, what is that sort of hostile anger? So you got to take that into consideration. And then there are those who love everything. And you're like, wow, they're like my friends. Oh, everything you do is great, Ray. And I'm like, well, I know, but come on, tell me some more. So I think reviews are an important part of development, but you have to be able to measure the source.
What projects are you working on right now?
So the ones that I can talk about, one, I am doing a project that is a novel. I'm working with somebody who has essentially written the full novel. So I'm sort of doing the comment and the foreword so that I can add my spin to it. It's a great one. And I'll also be working on taking that to some level, whether it's content, developing a script, merging it out, trying to shop it around and find a home for it. Because we're in such a world of voracious appetite for content, particularly content from people of color, and in particular, content from Black people. So there is a world out there. We just have to keep pounding it. So that's one. A second one is I have a client who is writing this wonderful book that's very necessary on oral health care. And it's a deep dive into what we thought we knew about oral health care. So I've played a role as a strategist, a storyteller. And one of the things that I hope to further contribute is to how to bring that message to the Black community. As an example, you may not think about how much discrimination we, particularly as women, face over bad teeth. People that have failing and dental health problems make less. They don't get the prime jobs because they're considered less attractive. And that's wrong. And so that overlaps into my, left brain stuff, but you wouldn't think about how somebody's discriminated against based on their oral health. So I want to bring that forward because oral health is probably one of the most preventable diseases we have. It really is. And yet we suffer the most from that. It's chronic. So I'm excited by that because that's a whole other area that I never really knew about. So I'm learning it. And like I said, I'm going to make my movie. I don't know if it's this year, next year. In fact, I just opened up a studio in Atlanta so that I'm near and dear to Tyler. I met Tyler Perry a few times. This was the first time was at this event in 2007. And we had a long chat. We had a really good time. And at the time he said, well, when you're ready, reach back. And I stalled for 12 years. So now I'm like, I'm ready. I'm like, I go back and forth between Atlanta and California. And,
do you do a outline or you just write?
I'm an outliner. Well, let me do it this way. Thoughts they just come pouring in, boom, boom, boom. And I just write them down to capture them. I could wake up in the middle of the night, notebooks everywhere. But then after I get the thought out, poof, then I go back and I start to organize it and outline it because that keeps me disciplined about finishing it. I am, for example, I'm into completion. And I start a lot of stuff and I will finish it because to me, that's just part of the thrill. So I'm working on a book about content. So I'll organize it. I have the section headings. And even if I'm not always doing a traditional publisher, I will do a book proposal just for my own discipline. And that keeps me on track because new ideas will just come racing in. Because otherwise you're like, I'm covering 17 different topics and none of which are focused. So I believe in focus.
Okay. How can readers get in touch with you?
Well, let's see. The first way is to visit my personal website, which is www.drrayemitchell.com. And that's spelled DRRAYE Mitchell.com, the regular way. Or you can find me at bossgirlgenius.com. That's the company website. And if all that is too confusing, just Google Raye Mitchell, RAYE, second word Mitchell, and you'll probably get about 10 pages of ways to find me.
Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
I would love to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank your readers for their interest. And I want to leave everybody with the thought that we're entering a new decade. And for those that have, however they define their relationship with God, I define it from my relationship as a Christian. And what I know is if you want God to do a new thing in your life, you have to let go of an old thing. So we're rolling into 2020, and I want everybody to let go of an old thing, like an old author, and adopt me as one of their new authors.
All right. All right.
Thank you. Let's see your new thing for 2020.
Thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it very, very much. And with that being said, I am Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.